The perfect family. Agatha and Larry met at the university, where they both studied art. She specialized in ceramics, and he specialized in graphic design. Their relationship was as light as the breath of a spring breeze, and after a few years they were married. Their marriage seemed perfect. Larry worked for a well-known company. Agatha had her own workshop, and with Tony's birth, their family became a real support for each other. Tony was a lively and curious boy. His parents liked to organize small adventures for him, from visiting museums to traveling to picturesque corners of the country. Agatha always said that memories are the best gift you can leave for a child. And Tony happily ran through the beaches, walked in the woods and conquered the mountain peaks with his parents. One summer, the family decided to spend a vacation by the sea. Their choice fell on a small town surrounded by mountains and coniferous forests. Fresh air, the sound of the surf and warm sand created a feeling of absolute peace. On the third day of rest, while walking along the beach, they met a young woman who was drawing a picture directly on the sand. Tony, interested in her work, ran closer and began to ask what she was doing. Agatha came over a little later, smiling friendly, and Larry stopped a little aside. "My name is Melissa," the artist introduced herself, gently moving the notebook away to protect it from the waves. "Are you here on vacation?" "Yes, we travel with the whole family," Agatha replied. "Do you seem to live here?" "So far," Melissa nodded. "I travel a lot, looking for inspiration." Their conversation was short, but Larry for some reason remained nearby even after Agatha and Tony went on. He began to ask Melissa about her work, enthusiastically listening to her stories. These conversations were repeated for a few more days, when Agatha was practicing with her son on the beach. After the end of the vacation, the family returned to normal life. Agatha again immersed herself in her business. She worked on a new collection of ceramics, which was to be presented at the exhibition, and also engaged in the education of Tony. Larry returned to work in the office, but his behavior changed. He became a little detached, often sat thoughtful even during the family dinner. "Are you all right?" Agatha once asked him. "Just a lot of work," he replied, avoiding her gaze. Agatha accepted this explanation, although she felt that Larry was hiding something. One evening, returning home, Larry gathered the family in the living room. "I have to tell you something," he began, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "I'm being sent on a business trip." "On a business trip?" Agatha was surprised. "But you've never been on such trips before." "This is a new customer. Our boss wants me to personally discuss the details of the contract with them." "It will take a few days, no more," he replied, trying to sound confident. Agatha nodded, although her intuition told her that something was wrong here. In fact, there was no business trip. Larry went to see Melissa, who now lives in another city. She invited him to her studio, where she showed her new works and talked about plans to organize an exhibition. Larry felt alive next to her. She reminded him of the times when everything seemed simple and exciting, when he himself dreamed of becoming an artist. However, Larry could not avoid thinking about the family. He saw Tony's photos that Agatha sent him every day and felt guilty. But whenever Melissa laughed or leaned over to correct her easel, those thoughts receded. Agatha, meanwhile, began to notice strange details. Larry stopped calling as often as he promised, and his answers were short. On the day he was about to return, she accidentally found a note in his office. "Thank you for the wonderful days. You're Melissa." The feeling as if the earth had disappeared from under her feet did not leave her for a few minutes. She sat down on a chair, staring at these words, and realized that her suspicions were confirmed. When Larry came back, Agatha directly asked him, "Who is Melissa?" Larry first tried to object, but, realizing that Agatha knew everything, confessed. He talked about their meetings at sea, how he went to her, and about his conflicting feelings. "I don't know what happened to me," he said, grabbing his head. "I thought I was missing something in life, but now I realize that I'm ready to lose everything." Agatha was confused. She didn't know if she could forgive her husband, but for the sake of Tony, she decided to give herself time to think about everything. Larry began to make efforts to restore her trust. He stopped communicating with Melissa, signed up for therapy, and even began to help more at home. Their family was no longer the same as before. But this story taught them to appreciate what they have and work on their relationships. Agatha realized that true love is not only about joy, but also about fighting for the family when it stands on the edge of the abyss. After Larry's confession, their home was filled with a silence that was hard to bear. Agatha didn't want to talk to her husband and tried to avoid him. Her wounds were too fresh, and the trust that had seemed unbreakable had been shattered. Larry, realizing his guilt, tried to do his best to make things right. He started coming home from work earlier, spent more time with Tony, and constantly offered to help Agatha. But she kept her distance, as if afraid that being close would only make her more vulnerable. One day, when Tony was at school, Larry offered to talk. "I know I hurt you, Agatha, and you have every right to hate me. But I want to try to make things right. Not for me, but for you and our son," he said quietly, looking her in the eye. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she replied, looking away, "but maybe we could try to rebuild something, at least for Tony's sake." Agatha agreed to Larry's suggestion to see a family therapist. The first sessions were difficult. The conversations touched on painful issues, and Agatha often cried. Larry admitted his mistakes, but it didn't make the situation any easier. The psychologist suggested working on rebuilding trust. One of the tasks was to write small notes together every night about what good they had done for each other during the day. At first it seemed like a formality, but over time Agatha began to notice that Larry was really trying. During this difficult period, Agatha realized that she needed to find herself again. She began to spend more time in her studio, working on a new series of ceramic pieces. The work helped her calm down and distract herself. She even started participating in local exhibitions, and her work received favorable reviews. One evening, after another exhibition, Larry was waiting for her at home with dinner. "I'm so proud of you, Agatha," he said when she returned, "You're incredible." These words touched her heart, even though she was not yet ready to fully forgive him. A few months later, when things seemed to be getting better, Melissa suddenly reappeared in their lives. She wrote Larry a message asking him to meet her to say goodbye. Larry hesitated for a long time, but finally decided to tell Agatha everything. "Melissa texted me," he said one night when Tony was already asleep. Agatha tensed. "And what are you planning?" "I want to meet her and put an end to it. But this time I won't hide anything." Agatha was silent for a long time and then said, "Okay. But if you take one more step outside of our marriage, I will no longer fight for this family." Larry agreed. When Larry met Melissa in the small cafe, she looked as bright and creative as she had then. But this time his heart didn't flutter. He saw only a person who had become part of his mistake. "I realized I couldn't wait any longer," Melissa said, "but I wanted to say goodbye. Melissa, I'm grateful for everything you've done for me, but I can't keep doing this. I have a family that I love, and I don't want to lose them." She nodded and smiled, though her eyes glistened with tears. "Then go to them, Larry. You've made the right choice." After the meeting, Larry returned home and told Agatha everything that had happened. She listened in silence and then just nodded. Her heart was no longer beating as painfully as before. She felt that Larry really wanted to make things right. Months passed. Their lives gradually took on a new direction. They began to spend more time together, planned new trips, and even started to dream of another child. This story left a mark on their lives, but it also taught them that even after the deepest shocks, it is possible to find the strength to restore love and respect. And although the path was not easy, Agatha and Larry decided to walk it together. Meeting with the past. Several years have passed. Agatha and Larry began to forget about the events that once brought their family to the brink of destruction. Tony grew up and chose his own hobbies, but his family remained his main support. Agata continued to work on her art, which became even deeper and more meaningful. She found a way to express her feelings through her art, creating exquisite sculptures that spoke of pain, hope, and forgiveness. Larry, for his part, actively supported his wife. He helped her organize exhibitions, took care of household chores, and even participated in some of her projects with Tony. It seemed that their family had found a new harmony. Suddenly, the past made itself felt. One day, when Agata was receiving orders for her new collection, she came across a letter from a gallery in another city. It stated that her work had aroused the interest of a famous artist who wanted to invite her to a joint project. The artist's name was familiar. It was Melissa. Agata looked at the letter for a long time, feeling mixed emotions. Her first impulse was to refuse. But something stopped her. She realized that this moment could be a chance to finally close the old page. That evening, she told Larry about the offer. "It's your choice, Agatha," he said, trying not to show his excitement, "but if you decide to accept this offer, know that I will support you in any way." Agatha nodded. She knew she couldn't run away from the past, but she wouldn't let it destroy what she had built. Agata agreed to cooperate and traveled to the city where Melissa lived. They met at a gallery, and Melissa was surprisingly reserved and friendly. "Thank you for agreeing to do this," she said. "I know it's not easy for you." "Yes," Agatha answered honestly, "but I want to put it all behind me." They worked on a joint project for several months. During this time, Agata realized that Melissa had changed. She wasn't trying to get back with Larry or destroy their family. Instead, she was trying to fix the mistakes she had made in the past. When the project was completed, Agata and Melissa shook hands. "You are a strong woman," Melissa said. "I wish you and your family nothing but happiness." "Thank you," Agatha replied, "and you too." When Agatha returned home, she was relieved. Her heart was no longer burdened with past hurts. A few more years passed. Tony became a teenager, and another child appeared in their family, a girl named Lily. Life returned to a quiet rhythm, but now Agatha and Larry knew that the true strength of a family is the ability to overcome difficulties together. In the evening, as Tony played with his sister and Agatha and Larry sat on the terrace with cups of tea, she said, "I'm glad we were able to get through this." "Me too," he replied, squeezing her hand. They never returned to the past again. Now their world was full of trust, love, and shared dreams. After completing her collaboration with Melissa, Agata returned to her city with the feeling that a large chapter of her life was finally closed. The joint project brought success to both artists, and their work was exhibited in several major galleries. However, the most important thing for Agata was that she stopped being afraid of her past. Larry met her at the train station with a bouquet of white lilies, her favorite flowers. "You have no idea how proud I am of you," he said, hugging her. "Thank you," Agata replied, "but now I just want to go home." At home, Tony and little Lily, who had already learned to take her first steps, were waiting for them. The evening was full of laughter and warm conversations, and Agata realized that these moments are the most important. A few months after the project was completed, Agata received an offer from one of the investors to open another workshop, a bigger and more modern one. Although it was a big step, she decided to take it. Larry supported her every step of the way, from finding the space to discussing the design. The new space has become not only a place to work, but also a real art platform where Agata began to hold workshops and exhibitions for local artists. "You're turning dreams into reality," Larry once said as he helped her set up the lighting in the new studio. "We do," she replied, looking at him warmly. The opening of the workshop was an important event for the whole family. Tony enthusiastically told his friends that his mom was a real artist, and Larry invited his colleagues to the studio, who were impressed by Agata's work. "I had no idea ceramics could be so alive," said one of them. Agata just smiled. Now she was not only creating art, but also inspiring others. Every year, the family started going to the sea, but now these trips have become completely different. Agatha, Larry, Tony and Lily spent time together exploring new places. Not only did they have fun, but they also created new memories that united them. One day, sitting on the beach, Tony asked, "Mom, do you believe that a family can overcome anything?" Agatha hugged him and answered, "If there is love and a desire to work on the relationship, then yes, it can." Larry nodded in support. "We proved it, son." A few years later, Tony grew up and went to university to study photography. His work was well received and he often entered competitions. At one of the exhibitions, his photographs won first place, and he dedicated the victory to his family. "This is for my mom, dad, and Lily, who have always been there for me," he said during the award ceremony. Agatha could not hold back her tears. She felt that their efforts, pain and struggle were not in vain. When Lily grew up, Agatha and Larry decided to take another step forward, to open a small family gallery where each member of the family could show their work. Tony displayed photographs, Agatha ceramics, and even little Lily painted pictures that touched visitors with their sincerity. The gallery became a symbol of their renewed love and joint efforts. It reminded them that a real ideal family is not one that never faces difficulties, but one that overcomes them together. "We've come a long way," Larry once said, standing next to Agatha in front of the gallery entrance. "But it was worth it," she replied, holding his hand. And so they began a new chapter in their lives, one filled with faith, hope, and love. Every year the family gallery became more and more popular. It attracted not only locals but also guests from other cities. Agatha organized thematic exhibitions dedicated to various aspects of family life and always found a way to involve Larry, Tony, and Lily. One day Tony suggested creating a series of works where Agatha's ceramics and Tony's photographs were harmoniously intertwined. They worked on the project together, and the exhibition was a huge success. "It's incredible how your works complement each other," said one critic. "Because they are created with love," Agatha replied. Little Lily, who grew up among art, also began to show her talents. At first it was small drawings, but later the girl became interested in sculpture. Agatha supported her by providing materials and patiently teaching her the intricacies of the work. When Lily made her first sculpture, a clay bird figure, Agatha could not contain her pride. "You have created something special, Lily," she said, hugging her daughter. "I want it in our gallery, Mom," the girl asked. The sculpture took pride of place at the entrance, and visitors looked at it with admiration, asking about the author. Every year, the family started organizing creative evenings for friends and neighbors. Everyone could come to the gallery, learn something new, and create something with their own hands. It became a tradition that united them with the community. Larry, who initially considered himself not an artist, found his calling in creating wooden frames for the family's artwork. He also began teaching others how to work with wood. "You've discovered a talent you didn't even know you had," Agatha once remarked, watching him at work. "It's inevitable in our family," Larry joked. On the 20th anniversary of their wedding, Tony and Lily organized a surprise for their parents, a special exhibition dedicated to their history. It featured the best works of Agatha, Larry, Tony and Lily, each of which reflected a certain stage of their lives. On one of the walls hung a large family portrait made by Tony with the caption, "We are art created by love." Agatha could not hold back her tears when she saw it. "We made it," she told Larry, squeezing his hand. "And there is so much more to come," he replied with a smile. The gallery continued to develop, and the family became increasingly involved in working with young artists. Agatha became a mentor for many, inspiring them by her example. Lily opened her first solo exhibition dedicated to nature. Tony started working on a photo book about his family's art. And Larry spent more and more time in the workshop, creating complex wooden structures that became popular among interior designers. Despite all their achievements, the most important thing for them was love and support for each other. Every evening they gathered at home, shared plans and memories, remembering that their strength was in unity. "We are a family, and that's the most important thing," Agatha said at dinner. "And we always will be," Larry added, raising a glass to their happy future. One day, when the gallery was celebrating its anniversary, the family decided to do something unusual. Agatha, Larry, Tony and Lily announced an open competition among visitors to create a joint installation. Everyone could submit their ideas, and the best ones were combined into one work. The result was a large wooden arch decorated with ceramic tiles with drawings made by each participant. The arch symbolized unity and creative collaboration. The words, "The future is what we create together," were engraved on the top of it. That evening, when all the guests had left, the family gathered under the arch. Their faces were illuminated by the soft, warm light of the moon. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Agatha said quietly, looking at the arch. "This is just the beginning," Larry replied. "I think we should think of something bigger," Tony added, "maybe a new project, a new place." "Or a trip," Lily suggested, looking dreamily up at the sky. Everyone thought for a moment, each thinking about their dreams and desires. "No matter what, we will always be together," Agatha said. "Together, but each of us has our own path," Larry added, looking at the children. And although at that moment they did not know where fate would take them, they all felt confident that their relationship would withstand any challenges. Because a real family is not only about living together, but also about supporting each other in every decision. The wind swayed the wooden slats of the arch, and it seemed as if it was silently blessing them with a new beginning. What awaited them next remained open, but each of them knew that they would create the future together.